Hello and welcome to the second video in our foundational video series designed to give you mental tools and philosophical concepts to better understand yourself and the world around you. The purpose and the topic of this video is to talk about value. That is to say, the difference between inherent value and attributed value. And the point of this video, in summary, real quick, is to basically give you the skills to be able to differentiate the difference between the two kinds of value, whether something is attributed value or whether something is inherent. And I'm going to try to outline why that's important, how we can recognize it in ourselves and society, etc., and how we can use that to better improve our own lives or the lives of those around us, society, structures, etc. And it pairs well with the other foundational videos. Let's get into it. So to begin, let's link this to my channel name. My channel name is Living Stories because we as people create stories and believe in stories to tell us a kind of purpose of meaning that we have to our identity, to our role in society, to our role as an individual, in family units, as friend units, etc. We as people believe in many stories. These stories can be as fundamental and as rudimentary as like a movie or a book that expresses specific ideas and that can teach cultural values, personal values, etc. Other kinds of things that you might not think of as a story is something a lot bigger, like perhaps a style of government, or the necessity for a person to behave in a certain way and function in a certain way in society. We believe in these common stories like public decency. That is a story that we believe in, that, oh, it is good to behave this way, and a person who behaves against this way may be categorized as a kind of like menace to society or rude or something like that. And they have all sorts of varying levels of different importance in our life, but we basically structure our lives, our sense of meaning, and even our sense of identity around stories. There have been lots of other authors that write on this concept, and we use these stories to give ourselves a sense of value. So that's what we're going to explore today, is the way that we create and achieve value in our lives, and also a little bit of that relation of how believing in a story can play into this value system that we want to either get value out of or we want to believe that it has value. So we're attributing value to it. So let's get into it. Inherent value versus attributed value. The purpose and the distinction here is to recontextualize the things that have value and the things that we give value to. These two things are inherent value, they truly have value, and the other is attributed value. We give something value because it can lead to those things that are true inherent values. So we attribute something with value because it will eventually lead through the process of engaging with this thing to a truer sense of an inherent value. If we truly understand this, that means that we will have the ability to reshape many aspects of our lives so that we can achieve more actual inherent value and less attributed value. Not to say that attributed value is bad value or fake value, it's just that it is created value instead of inherent. And it is not the goal to only have attributed value, but it is the goal for those things that we attribute value to eventually lead to real inherent value. And the problem will arise, as you see through our discussion, if the things that we are attributing value to do not lead to that inherent value, then that's not something that we need to hold on to. It's something that we can change, we can reevaluate, right? So that's the point. There are core inherent values when it comes to being human, and we can see these values, we can measure these values. There's a lot of research in the past decade or two that try to investigate and do research on the effects of certain things on our body, like stress or having a meaning or having acceptance, feeling loved, having an in-group, feeling like we have enough friends versus too many friends, whether our job gives us real purpose or meaning, whether we are satisfied in our job, in our sex life, in our marriage, in other things like that. There's a lot of studies about the physiological effects of these things, of happiness, of peace, of joy, of safety, of community, of low stress, of a strong sense of identity, of a healthy sense of identity. And there are also ways that philosophy or psychology will try to study and measure the effects of having these values fulfilled or not on our mental health, emotional health, philosophical health. We can also measure the structures that we create in society and whether or not they truly bring us a good sense of value or not, or whether we're believing in them and giving them attributed value when they may or may not be ponying up that actual inherent value or not. So our culture is something that we can measure, our society is something that we can measure, our structures in our life is something that we can measure to see what effects do we get from having our values represented and fulfilled and taken care of. But when the attributed value overcomes the actual inherent value, what we acquire is a deficit of value in our life. What happens when the story strays from actually fulfilling that real value and leading us to that inherent value? The story continually detracts, as we believe in it, from our actual inherent value that we have in our life. And we believe merely, and we are following merely, that attributed value, but not really getting what we need out of it. And that is the relationship between inherent value and attributed value that can happen within ourselves or within our societies that we create as a whole. Let's now get into what are these attributed and inherent values. Let's define them a little more specifically. Inherent values are things that are deep and core to our human experience. These things are inescapable and they are very necessary for us to have during our human experiences, or we will feel an absence of value in our life. The main of these core inherent values are things like purpose and meaning, love, happiness, peace, safety, and there is relations between these, as a sense of safety can contribute to your sense of happiness. And keep in mind, we can see how when you have these things in your life, when you have an abundance of happiness, when you have peace and you're not constantly stressed and worried about stuff like bills or your health or the health of your friends, your family, whatever, then we live much better lives. Our life expectancy grows longer, we are less likely to contract chronic diseases, we are less likely to slip into things like addiction or abusive relationships or self-loathing. So overall, we can see physiologically, mentally, and emotionally, there are positive trends if we are able to achieve having these values in abundance in our lives. One way you can think about these core inherent values is a little bit layered effect, like more deeper core ones and then ones that are slightly above that that tend to lead to those core ones, something like a sense of belonging or romance or family. Almost like if you think about the earth and the core and the mantle and the crust, well, that crust are the things that have attributed value. Those are the things that we give value to. Our habits and routines, the stories we believe, our belief systems, our worldviews, these things that we attribute value to will eventually lead down to one of those core values. These attributed things, of course, do not have inherent value themselves, but they are valuable because through that sort of chain link, they lead down towards something that is inherent value. So let's take a look at an easy example chain. Something on the outside layer, that thing that has attributed value, is going to be a cultural thing. It could be something like coffee drinking culture, fitness culture, gaming culture, whatever it is, that thing, that culture is the outer layer crust. Well, that thing, if you follow down, will lead to a sense of community. Having a sense of community will lead further down into a sense of belonging. Having a sense of belonging can give you a sense of safety, maybe peace, happiness, and other things can branch out from there. Once we understand this, we will begin to see things like all around us that are attributed value things, and we will see that pattern, that link, and maybe we can guess at some of them as we see them around us, or we can analyze ourselves and we can figure out what are those links and what core value, core inherent value am I achieving by this external thing that I am attributing value to. Once we understand this, we can see this everywhere. We can understand why we as individuals do things, why we as societies and cultures do things. The reason is to achieve that core inherent value. The problem is when the thing that we're doing or putting attributed value on does not actually achieve that inherent value anymore. Cool. And that problem is exemplified when people believe in the story. They believe in the thing that they're attributing value to so hard that the thing that they're attributing value to isn't even giving them value anymore, but they don't care and they don't see it. And they don't see that they're not getting what they're supposed to get out of it, but they still believe in that thing so hard. Two big concepts that I want to talk about briefly that I'm really familiar with is the idea of the American dream and the idea of the American melting pot. So the American dream, as I always heard it, was American dream is make it or break it. You can go there and you can have a great idea, maybe you can get really rich, but the concept of breaking it was never like death or just a complete and utter ransacked life. But if we look at today's modern statistics about people reaching the economic middle class and the number of people stuck in poverty, sub-poverty, or even just barely over poverty, extreme low income, there are not very many people even making it to middle class anymore in America. And so this concept of make it or break it, whatever that was before, and that thing would have been different for different groups of people, as the American dream would have been more accessible or more inaccessible for certain groups of people. But that American dream now of maybe, just maybe, I'll make it into middle class, and if not, what happens? I'm impoverished, I'm below the poverty line. Studies again show people below the poverty line have shortened life expectancies. Maybe they can't pay their medical bills, so they're going to die of something else even earlier. And our quality of life will be drastically reduced and infringed on. So the American dream is something closer or akin to mediocrity or death. That's what you get. You are not making it. You are barely getting to middle class, maybe. Mediocrity or death. And the belief in this system, this story, has completely shattered for a lot of people. And a lot of people are moving on and saying we have incredible economic problems and structural problems in the US, workers' rights problems, all sorts of stuff, right? This thing is a huge topic. But other people are still clinging to it, still think that there is this grand meritocracy, or that still think that they are just an inconvenienced billionaire, just waiting to happen. They're just mildly temporarily, hindered or slowed at this moment, but soon, just wait, they're going to be a multi-millionaire. Right, it's just going to happen any day now. They get their idea out there. But they don't even see that the system is probably not going to let them do that, or that another system that we could value instead would allow them to actually do that much easier, with a lot more social safety nets or just basic human conditions met. A lot of those inherent core values met a lot more easily. The other topic is the idea of the American melting pot. Now, the American melting pot is that, we are all immigrants, we all come from immigrant places and immigrant families, and we all bring our different cultures here and our different experiences from all over the world, and we all mix it together, right? Well, for some people, that story is rewarding. That story brought us core inherent value through that link of believing in this story, meeting people of different cultures, being inspired by those cultures, being intrigued by those cultures, getting to enjoy different aspects of those different melting pot cultures, all enriching our life, giving us a sense of self, even if we don't see ourselves as all of those things in the melting pot. Of course we don't, but we see ourselves as someone who can enjoy and appreciate those things. And I like to travel. I've been around to different places in the world, and I've seen a lot of cultures, even more than the US as a melting pot. And I don't obviously think that I'm those cultures, but I enjoy engaging with them, and the people enjoy sharing it with me. And so in that way, I, as my identity, am built up. That yes, I am someone who has different cultures, and I enjoy these different cultures, and I'm, whatever, right? So I see that as myself, and I am enriched by it. But on the flip side, there are people who are not enriched by it. And when a person believes that story or hears that story and never has their core inherent values fulfilled and met by that story, by believing in that in some way, then they have a high propensity to flip to the other side, which is that white nationalist, white ethno-state, white supremacist mindset that says, well, we shouldn't be a melting pot. What good is this for us, right? And You see a lot of that in the US right now. Growing and rising sentiments, conspiracy theories abound, and misinformation abounds, of course, but you see people reacting to the failure of that story where they had attributed value, and they're getting no inherent value out of it. And that's the bad thing that's going to happen when they realize that story doesn't bring them value. They're either going to flip to another story, or something like keep believing the American dream and just end up in death. Or even maybe, yeah, they believe in the American dream and make it to mediocrity. But still, what kind of society is that when we probably could build one that's a lot better? The question then becomes, great, we realized it, but why is this important? Because we can change it. Because the core values, we probably can't change. Those are the core inherent values that we as human beings need. But the things on the outside that we are attributing value to, well, we can change. We made them all up. We attributed value to them so that they would work down that chain, that link, that path to the inherent value. So, of course, we can change them, and that's the point. And putting this principle into practice allows us to break all sorts of personal cycles, cultural cycles, structural cycles that all cause us to have a lack of inherent value fulfilled, or completely miss the mark and just not have it at all. It can prevent cycles of violence, war, hatred, revenge. It can prevent cycles in our structural systems where there's just a complete lack of empathy and human needs met. Something like our healthcare system recently is a big one in the US. Something like this. So we can change it all. For more examples and personal stories about this in my life, you can watch one of the accompanying videos. Thanks for watching, and check out the accompanying videos if you need more examples or a little more fleshed out. Why I think this is so important. Thanks. Bye-bye.